Lindsey, I believe this is going to be you and Michael talking about data use agreements.
Yes, thanks, Jesse. I'll take over here, and if you don't mind unsharing your screen, I will share mine. Perfect. Let me share my screen real quick. For case study number 2, everybody can see that. I'm Michael McAllister with VU IT and Lindsey Fox with Research IT. We're going to take a look at an example from the Razor Lab in the chemistry department. Now, this lab has faced multiple challenges managing over 10 data use agreements at any given time. They have both incoming and outgoing DUAs that vary in security requirements. So what is a data use agreement, or DUA, you might ask? Cliff touched on it in the beginning a little bit. Simply put, a data use agreement is a contractual document that may be required when there is a transfer of certain types of information, usually sensitive information, to Vanderbilt University. So using some of the major steps in the research data management steps that Cliff mentioned earlier, we'll take a look at some of these challenges that the Razor Lab has faced. In the planning phase, the Razor Lab had to begin early in the planning stage by submitting DUA applications with the sponsors and submitting the REDCap form on the VU sponsored programs website to initiate the contract and security requirement assessment. Sponsored program then engages Vanderbilt IT to assist with meeting the sponsor imposed security requirements. The security requirements can vary from sponsor to sponsor, but in most cases, our baseline securities that we apply for all DUAs meet 90% of these requirements. So what are those requirements, you ask? Our baseline security requirements include system configuration management, updated OS, making sure your operating system's up to date, automatic patching, full disk encryption, strong password protection, 15-minute screensaver lockout, VPN access, and something we call endpoint detection and response. All of this in an effort to make sure that your data is secure and safe and that you meet these sponsor imposed security requirements. Creating and/or accessing. For incoming DUAs, the method usually depends on the sponsor as to how you will initially access the data. The sponsor will either provide a secure portal for download, or they might send you an encrypted file with a key. For outgoing, VU IT Security recommends the use of OneDrive for secure file transfer. That may not be the best solution in all cases, but is one that we recommend. And we actually have a website out there dedicated to secure file transfer on VU IT's website. If assistance is needed with secure file transfer, VU IT Risk and Compliance is happy to assist. Storing. Often, sponsors will require on-premises storage. For Razor Lab, they are required to use on-premises storage with backups disabled for some of their DUAs, where cloud storage could be used for others. To keep track of which data can live in the cloud, which data can remain on premises, it is critical to align data flows with the required storage targets. VU IT helped the lab create a dedicated workstation inventory list. This ensured that only the required storage targets were available on each dedicated workstation, and that only an authorized user on an authorized workstation could access the data. Likewise, for computing, it is essential that all areas the data travel, including different compute workstations and servers, have the required securities applied, and that only authorized users have access. This goes back to keeping an accurate workstation inventory by allowing access to dedicated workstation that VU IT has implemented those sponsored imposed security requirements on. Curating. Through the generation of data from scientific instruments, the lab had to think about and define research data management workflows that made sense for their operations. Since they have multiple data sources, this helped them ensure that their data would remain organized and available for reuse for analysis in the lab, as well as preservation for later use. Preserving. In most cases, there's a requirement to keep the data for a certain period of time, often up to 7 years. When that data is no longer in use, there are options of moving to different cloud storage or deep archive storage options that may be available. Before moving data to any other location, you'll always want to verify with VUIT security that the storage options you are considering meet the sponsored security requirements. Lindsey will speak a little bit about some of the storage options available to you at Vanderbilt on the next slide, while she recaps some of the challenges faced by the Razor Lab.
Great, thanks, Michael. So just to go over that again, we had 11 data use agreements that covered and spanned 14 different lab members. This made managing a little bit more challenging. Each of the DUAs had varying security requirements. Some of the challenges of navigating the security requirements for each DUA included processes with SPAL and VUIT to help them navigate and implement each requirement. It was the responsibility of the PI to keep accurate user access inventory for those 14 lab members. Something we should note is that these 14 lab members often rotated, included grad students. People come, they go, and that means a higher level of management. We also had dedicated workstations. This became confusing and a little bit more difficult during the pandemic, as lab members were worried about how they might access through their personal devices. We solved this by using the VPN and remote desktop protocol. Through this, they were able to leverage the VPN to remote into their dedicated lab machines so they could still access their data. Although we use dedicated workstations for this set of DUAs, it's worth noting that we have a lot of varying options on campus, whether that includes on-prem computing at places like Acre or cloud computing in something like AWS. Adding and removing access as necessary was also a challenge. An established checklist for onboarding new lab members to the DUA process was used. I'd like to mention also on-premise storage options. Again, although this use case used dedicated workstations, we have several on-prem storage options, such as the distributed online research storage system at Acre. This provides mountable desktop storage solutions. Or you can use something like a cloud option through AWS, SharePoint, OneDrive, Box, or AWS. And now I'll pass it back to Derek, I think.
All right. Thank you, Michael and Lindsey.